Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Right, the values that shape Judaism's civil code. Lesson number 2, Beyond Restitution, properly undoing damage. Now, I want to begin with a very well-known anecdote. It takes place back in the Soviet Union. A representative from the KGB knocks on the door of a peasant farmer. And he says to him here, I am here to check for your loyalty to the motherland, your your commitment, your dedication. And he says to him, right, would you donate, right, an entire fleet of cars to the motherland? He says, absolutely, I would donate it all to the motherland. He's, am I getting it right, motherland? Russia's motherland, or is it fatherland? It's motherland. Motherland, okay. So I would donate an entire fleet of cars, right, to the motherland. And then he says, okay, what would you donate an entire treasure chest of gold to the motherland? He says, absolutely. I am so loyal to the motherland, I would donate an entire treasure chest of gold to the motherland. The KGB agent says to him, would you donate, right, 2 chickens to the motherland? And the guy says, absolutely not. The guy's flabbergasted. I don't understand. You would donate a fleet of cars. You would donate a treasure of gold. Why would you not donate 2 chickens? And he says, because I actually have 2 chickens. It's very easy to talk big, right? About things you don't have, about things that are not coming out of your pocket. But when it comes to things that are actually going to cost you, all of a sudden, it's a different perspective. And that's very, very relevant to the topic of this course, because the topic of this course is Jewish values shape Jewish law. It's very easy to promote Jewish values, to love Jewish values, to talk about Jewish values when it doesn't cost you anything. Now, in the last class, we actually talked that it's not so easy even to live up to Jewish values, even when it doesn't cost you anything. As we learned in last week's class, that the value of helping another person, allowing another person to benefit when it costs you nothing, there are times when the court can compel you to act. Today, we're going to discuss an even more radical idea. Not just Jewish values where it doesn't cost you, but we're going to be discussing Jewish values and how those Jewish values impact law when it actually does cost you in the real world. I'm going to introduce this topic with a very short video about a case that you are probably familiar with. In Hungary, there is an extreme right-wing political party called Jobbik. As whatever you could envision and imagine a evil, anti-Semitic type of political party is, that is what that represented. Openly anti-Semitic. One of the leaders of that group was actually elected to the European Parliament representing the Jobbik. So he was one of the most prominent politicians within this movement, visible, vocal, promoting and spewing the type of propaganda, negativity, hatred into the society. And this was growing. We're talking, it was a movement. People marching in the streets. This was no small task. And then this politician discovers that he is Jewish. And he is kicked out of the party. There's a fabulous 2-hour documentary that's worth watching. Here is a short clip. Enjoy.
Mr. Szegedi was the poster boy in Central Europe of anti-Semitism. He was vice president of the European Nazi Party, and during that time, he never missed an opportunity to express his anti-Semitism.
We Jews believe in Teshuvah. We have to give every person a chance of repenting.
He created an atmosphere, an anti-Semite atmosphere in the city. That when you say you dirty Jew, it's just like saying hello.
My part of the story is that I decided give him a chance. That's what Judaism teaches us. Love every Jew, give him a chance. I really believe I will never become an anti-Semite.
It's really hard for me to see him here right in the middle of us, see him standing and talking to us and telling us, I'm a Jew, I'm a real Jew, believe me. I'm proud to be Jewish. I really don't believe him.
Hogy én nem akarok zsidó lenni. Kibe csak egy csepp zsidóvér csörgedezik. Ugyanis ha az antiszemita gondolkozás az olyan, én ismerem, hogyha van egy hordó vized, belecsöppentesz egy tintát, egy csepp tintát, akkor az meg fogja fogni az egész hordónyi vizet.
Sie heute auch ihre rhetorischen und charismatischen Fähigkeiten ein, um genau diesen Schaden wieder
ersprengen kann und ein vollkommener Jude in Anführungszeichen.
Hallo Herr Szegedi, ich bin nämlich selber auch Ungarin. Einer der Gründe, warum ich in Deutschland bin, ist Menschen wie Sie, Herr Szegedi. Für mich, in meinen Augen, ist es ein Riesenfake. Es ist ein Riesentheater, was Sie uns vorspielen und was auch im Video gesehen wurde.
Tapssal és nem éjjenzéssel van kikövezve. Abszolút megértem, ha valaki így gondolkozik. Nem esik jól, rosszul esik, persze, hogy rosszul esik. Persze, hogy ezeknek a kétkedő embereknek nagyon bízom, hogy egy idő után majd eloszlanak a kételjei. Nem tudok más tenni.
So this Hungarian politician, right, anti-Semite, discovers that he's Jewish. He wants to return to the Jewish community, and there is a lot of friction. There's a lot of friction. Is he sincere? Is he not sincere? He's invited to speak. He's boycotted. The Jewish community cancels it. People challenge him. He was supposed to speak in Montreal. He wasn't even allowed into Canada because of his past affiliation. What do you say about a person like this? How would you feel about someone like that speaking in the Jewish community right here in Milwaukee to try to maybe make it more relatable in America? A few years ago, there was that march, the Tiki Torch March, right? That famous Tiki Torch March. People were screaming, Jews will not replace us, amongst the many racist and anti-Semitic bigoted views that they were espousing. Could you imagine if the leader of that movement, I don't remember his name offhand, the person who led that movement, who promoted that movement, I don't mean on the side, was literally paving the way and brought that Tiki Torch movement to your town, to Milwaukee, to the government. People are getting elected. And that guy discovers he's Jewish and all of a sudden changes his tune. What would he have to do to earn reacceptance in the community? I open the floor to you. What are your thoughts? You could unmute yourself and jump right in. If I see you with a hand raised, I can call on you as well. Alan.
Well, just to start it seems to me that the question is how realistic the person and you believed it was totally sincere, you'd probably say, well, then I got to give him a chance. Bigger problem for me as a trial lawyer and such is to say, now, how do I know he's really sincere? Why should I believe him? And why should I take the chance that he's playing me, that he's conning me? And so the problem is as much the mindset of the audience, whether it's gullibility or acceptance or whatever you want to call it, as it is the mindset of the convert, if I can use that word.
You definitely bring up some good points. Now, a person could have a mindset that I don't believe in anyone and I'm going to need some major proof. Or a person could have exactly the opposite attitude. I believe in everyone, and I'm ready to be all there for anyone who's saying sorry. And then maybe there's a middle position. You're not leaning one way or the other. You're going to look for evidence. You're open to it. Maybe that's the healthiest place to be. The reality is, though, that today, in the year 2022, in the United States of America, we are experiencing something which some people can call cancel culture. To the degree that you believe in it can be debatable, but I think it would be very hard for anyone to ignore the fact that people who share various ideas, positions, or opinions can very easily get themselves dismissed, canceled, written off from all kinds of things. Right? We are a society today that is very quick to judge, to punish, to ostracize people. Right? Social media certainly plays a huge role in this. But is this the Jewish way? What is the Jewish approach? What does Judaism have to say about sin, forgiveness, making amends, and so on? So first of all, I think we all understand that Judaism believes very strongly in the concept of teshuvah. Now, I want to give you a new definition for teshuvah. You might not have heard this one before. Personal restoration. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't like it. Teshuvah means a person is undergoing a process. They are moving away from the negative experiences and behaviors of their life, transforming themselves into the positive. It is a process of personal rehabilitation and personal restoration. I see a text here. Oh, I gotta leave early, sorry. Okay, it will be, this will be recorded for you. So Judaism is very big on teshuvah. Right? Judaism believes in people, that people have the ability to restore, to change, to become good again. Judaism believes that teshuvah is always possible. Let's go to text number 2. We're going to start off with text number 2.
Teshuvah atones for all sins. Even if one was wicked their entire life and did teshuvah at the last moment, their wickedness is no longer held against them. This is the meaning of the verse, a wicked person will not stumble due to their wickedness on the day they do teshuvah for it.
All right, let's break this text down and try to go by it piece to piece, piece by piece, so we can understand what is being stated here. So number 1, teshuvah can be done. Teshuvah atones for all sins. Included in the statement here, teshuvah atones for all sins. Are there any sins that are not included?
All means all.
All means all. Teshuvah atones for all sins. Now, before we continue, I just want to address something very, very right at the beginning here. Does that mean that the shooter, right, who killed 19 people, right, 17 or so children in Texas, can do teshuvah? His sins can be atoned for? Does that what it mean? No. And we're going to see why, right? We're going to see why that's the case, right? Can Hitler do teshuvah? No, right?
No.
He's a little bit late for that. But we're talking about the everyday normal experience of people and the sins that they might commit, including even murder, right? Again, mass murder, these are more extreme examples. They can be talked about as well. But for the purpose of this class, we're talking serious stuff. Adultery, murder, right? You know, serious issues. The bottom line is, from a Jewish perspective, every sin that a person has committed, teshuvah is there for them to atone for all their sins. And again, we'll get to more detail of that. The Rambam writes, even if one was wicked their entire life. This means every person at all times. Now, I've heard many times people ask the question, does that mean if there's a Nazi lay dying and he, makes some type of statement in belief in something, that somehow that person is going to go to heaven and the Jews that they killed are somehow not? Of course not, right? That's not what this means, right? Even if one was wicked in their entire life, a person could do teshuvah? Yes. What does that mean? We'll explain. Even at the last moment, right? At any time. So these are the basic parameters of tshuva. A person could argue that this is a very radical position, but what is this all based on? The question is, how does Judaism view people? Do we view people that their failures represent the fact that they are permanently broken people? They have to be ostracized. There is no possibility for rehabilitation. Is that how we view people and human nature? Or do we have a much more compassionate perspective, a more hopeful view of people, which is that human beings are all flawed, all of us. And due to various circumstances in life, we make mistakes. Some are much bigger than other people's mistakes. But at the end of the day, they are correctable. We are correctable. Human beings can change and grow. Judaism is fiercely hopeful that everyone and at any time can achieve this personal restoration. So he said everything. Everything means not just for a transgression between a person and God, right? Person ate a cheeseburger, right? You can do tshuva for that. But we don't just mean that. A person is able to do teshuvah even for transgressions between a person and their fellow, right? Theft, robbery, injury, murder, there's a lot of things included in that category. A person can do teshuvah even for these type of things, and it applies to everyone. Maimonides uses the term everyone very literally. And again, we're going to explain why there are some people who could be excluded, because the process of tshuva is not so simple. This includes people who have lived a lifestyle of crime. It's never too late to do tshuva. Even a criminal is lying on his or her deathbed, God values and accepts their tshuva. What is the caveat? The caveat here, of course, is something that goes without saying, but as we all know, anything that goes without saying has to be said, right? Because if you don't say it, then it actually doesn't go, because you never said it. What does that mean? A person has to actually do teshuvah. You actually have to do teshuvah. Teshuvah is not a line. Teshuvah is not a sentence. Teshuvah is not a prayer. Teshuvah is not some type of ritual. It's sincere. It's genuine. It's real. It's life-changing and has the ability to change the past and influence the future. So let's break it down piece by piece. How does a person do teshuvah? Letter R, right? Amazing how a Jewish concept of tshuva in Hebrew all begins with the letter R. Step number one is resolution. What does this mean? First of all, a person has to immediately stop whatever behavior that they're doing and resolve to never do it again. There has to be a firm, strong resolution to never do it again, and obviously you have to stop. If a person does not stop, that really is going to have some serious question marks on their tshuva. Step number two, remorse. You actually have to feel bad about it. Now, what do I mean by remorse? Not remorse that you got caught. That does not count as remorse. Remorse means remorse that I did the sin, the crime, the transgression, right? In the case of Bernie Madoff, not that we're going to discuss him too deeply here, but for Bernie Madoff to feel remorse, right, he has to feel remorse, not that he got caught, right? He has to feel remorse that he hurt people. He destroyed people's lives. He destroyed institutions' lives. He has to feel that pain deeply within them. Otherwise, that's not called tshuva. Step number three, you have to make restitution. If we're talking about a financial crime, you have to make restitution. You have to make right. You have to make whole whatever it was that you took, stole from the other person. Without that, that's not called tshuva. Now, when it comes to murder, is it possible for a person to make restitution to someone that they killed? No, right? That's not possible, right? What are you going to do? Bring the person back to life? You're going to resurrect them? That's not something that the person can be done. So a person can do all the other steps of tshuva, but it's ultimately the death of that person that is part of the atonement process. Otherwise, it's going to be sincerely lacking. So this is going to be one of the reasons why, yes, can a murderer do tshuva? Yeah. Finally, then step number 4, there is appeasement. There's another version of this where it's an R, not in this PowerPoint, but trust me, there's a version with an R. You have to actually ask forgiveness from the person and appease the victim. That means it's not just enough to pay for your crime from some type of financial perspective. You have to actually approach the person, ask for forgiveness. The person is under no obligation to forgive you. They have to feel and sense and appreciate your absolute sincerity and be okay with it for it to be considered tshuva. Right? You actually have to be good with that person that you did the crime for it to be tshuva. And finally, you have to verbally confess. You have to verbally confess and declare your resolution before God. Right? The words actually have to come out of your mouth. So we see here that the process of tshuva, right, is designed to restore and to rehabilitate the person. This is not a show, right? This is not something for show. It has to be genuine, it has to be real. Each step of the way makes this very, very clear. You have completely dropped your bad behavior. You put yourself in the best position possible that you will not repeat this type of behavior. You're making the victim whole. You're restoring the goodwill that you had with the victim. When a person sincerely works these steps, the person is considered repaired, restored, rehabilitated. That is tshuva. There's a big difference between repentance and teshuva. The difference is to the previous state before the impact of the offense. What that means is a person who has done teshuva is not supposed to be the same person. They're not the sinner who repented. They're the same person that they were before they repented. That means all of the goodwill that they had, the reputation that they had, right? It's a transformational thing. But now we're going to see it's even more than that. Teshuva doesn't just make you to the state before you sinned. You're actually better than you were before. The Talmud makes this statement: in the place where returnees stand, person was born, was only good, pure, holy, positive, never did a negative thing in their life. Then you have another person. The person may have committed various forms of sin and transgression, maybe religious, maybe ethical, maybe oral, maybe moral, whatever the sin may have been. And they've done tshuva, they've returned. The Talmud says the person who has returned, the person who's done tshuva, is even greater than the person who was perfectly righteous. How? Why? Can someone make an argument for the higher spiritual status of the person who has done teshuva versus the person who never sinned? Sandy, looks like you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I think it's because you've actually made an effort to improve yourself than the person who necessarily so. And, they don't feel like they have anything to ask for forgiveness for.
Very good. A person who is perfectly righteous is like a person who's on cruise control, while a person who has sinned, who has transgressed, and then transformed and changed metal. We're talking about a person who truly worked on themselves, looked deeply inside themselves, who faced and confronted the negative elements of their character, refined them, and in many cases, completely eliminated them. So a person who has done tshuva, this is a person with serious character development. They knew their mistakes and the pain, so they're way more motivated never to cause that pain again to other people. They are weathered with real life struggles and experiences. They fear failing again and have a newfound love for Torah. So oftentimes a person who has done tshuva properly is a greater person than they were before when they were sin-free. So tshuva is not just fixing the problem, but you actually come to a higher level than you ever were before. And again, this path is open for everyone, anytime, and for any sin. This is what Judaism believes about tshuva, about personal restoration, that you, the criminal, the sinner, the violator, can become better than you were before, and even better is actually what life is all about. The very purpose of life is this tshuva. Phil, would you like to read text number 4? I know you have to leave soon. Just about 8 o'clock. So are you available?
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay, text number 4.
Yes, page 44.
Why did our soul descend into this physical world if the ultimate goal is its return to heaven, where it enjoys the radiance of God's presence? Prior to the soul's descent, it was also in heaven and enjoyed the radiance of God's presence. The true answer to this question lies in the sage's teaching. A single moment of repentance and good deeds in this world is greater than all of the world to come. Similarly, our sages taught that in the place where returnees stand, even completely righteous people cannot stand. Before the soul's descent into a body, it was undoubtedly perfectly righteous. But as a result of its descent, it can experience teshuvah and rise to a height that is superior to that of the righteous.
So in this text, the Alter Rebbe, the founder of the Chabad movement, asked this question: why were we created? Our souls existed before our bodies came into existence. Why were our souls sent down into this world? What is going to be accomplished? Our soul is a spark of God. A soul is a piece of the divine. The soul is a spiritual entity. What does it accomplish by coming down into this world? And he explains that the soul gets partnered with the body. Now, the body has some shortcomings. The body has an evil inclination. The body has an animal soul. The body has ego, selfishness, right? The body has its whole set of challenges. And every person experiences these challenges in life. By working on ourselves, by developing ourselves, by doing our own tshuva, for whatever path our life leads it on, the soul becomes elevated. The soul is able to experience growth, right? And this is the very purpose for which we were created. Won't the pristine soul be negatively affected? Why send us down here? Even if it doesn't get affected, what's the end goal? The answer, the Alter Rebbe says, in our physical, imperfect world, the soul struggles. When we overcome a struggle, we achieve a greater level of spirituality. Let's go back to that a second. So we achieve a greater level of spirituality. And the Alter Rebbe explains that this is God's plan. This is God's purpose for us to come down here so we can experience real tshuva and real growth. Being that that's, I'll get you one more second, being that's the case, Phil, if the purpose of existence is for our soul and body to experience the type of growth that only can come as a result of the challenging experience of being alive, being that that's the purpose that we're sent here, therefore, God is going to set up a system. God is going to do everything possible to encourage us to be on that path. All right, Phil, what was your question?
Yeah, so, the statement or the quote, the single moment of repentance in the world is greater than all of the world to come. So, I'll be right there. Honey. So that seems like it's a bit of an exaggeration because a single moment could be 1 second, could be half a second, or being greater, sorry for the announcement, that being greater than the entire world to come doesn't seem like that doesn't make sense to me.
Great question, Phil. We actually covered this question in the course Journey of the Soul. So maybe I could refresh your memory briefly. Spiritual delight and pleasure, right? There's nothing that can compare to the world to come, right? The world to come is literally paradise. It's as paradise as you could possibly get. However, in terms of value, in terms of what's more important, a moment of teshuvah, even 1 second of teshuvah in this world is more important and it's more valuable than all of the world to come. The world to come is entertaining, right? The world to come is beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's pleasurable. It's the height of spirituality. But in terms of importance and of value, 1 moment of tshuva is much more significant. The growth that a human being can experience here cannot be compared to the entire world to come. Mitchell, yes.
But that shows up in Pirkei Avot.
It does, absolutely, yeah. Right, so we have established the importance of tshuva within Judaism and why we want to make sure that it's accessible and it's available for every person. So just to conclude this point here with a line from the Yom Kippur davening. On Yom Kippur, we say in the Machzor, you extend a hand to transgressors, your right hand stretches forth to receive penitence, right? Your right hand stretches forth to receive people who did tshuva. So what does this mean? You extend a hand to those who haven't fallen deeply, right? God is always available. Your right hand stretches forth to receive penitence to those who have fallen deeply. In Judaism, we use this metaphor for God's right hand. What is God's right hand? God's right hand represents that which you want to bring closer, that which you hold to be the most dear. So yes, the people who have made the most serious transgressions, sins, etc., that's what we say in Yom Kippur. God's right hand extends forth to them. He stretches his hand out to them, to those who have fallen deeply, to open a path for them for tshuva. Now, being that this is, gotta go, all right. Good night, Phil. Thank you. We'll see you. The recording will be on YouTube by tomorrow. Being that this is a critical value within Judaism, right, from God's perspective, we must emulate God in all his ways. If God enables tshuva, we must do the same. We have to have the same attitude. So with this in mind, what can the legal system do to encourage rehabilitation, right? If we want to have this mindset and attitude, teshuva is the most important thing. Rehab is the most important thing. Every human being is a child of God and has a soul that's a part of God. Nobody is garbage, nobody's junk, no one gets tossed, no one gets thrown away. Everyone has an opportunity to do teshuva. What could we do? In our course, Crime and Consequence, which we had about 3 years ago, we talked about various rehab programs that prisons can have to help people along the path and how those programs could be incentivized greatly, early release, various type of things. Those are all good, those are all wonderful. They should expand, they should get bigger, they should get better. What we're going to talk about tonight is something a little bit different. We're going to talk about not after the arrest, we're going to talk about before the arrest. Because of the fact that Jewish law values the concept of teshuvah so much, therefore Jewish law wants to encourage people to come clean, to come forward, before even getting arrested at all. So Jewish law wants to open the door, to leave a door open to start the process of rehabilitation. And this is recognizing a very simple truth. If you make it hard to do anything, less people are going to do it. It's a simple fact. If you make it hard to do tshuva, if you make it hard, if you have to jump through hoops and so on and so forth, less people are going to do it. So from a Jewish legal perspective, we want to make sure the door's open. We're not slamming the door in the face of anyone. Therefore, we incentivize the journey towards teshuva. Is it radical? Yeah, it's probably a little bit radical. However, it makes it highly manageable for the criminal to be on the path towards teshuva. We're going to specifically focus for the rest of today's lesson about theft, right? How does Jewish law leave open the path of teshuva for theft? Before we continue, anyone have any questions on what we have studied thus far? No? All right. So the case study is on page 40. Sandy, would you like to read the case study that's on page 47?
Sure. Mark was a career criminal with a lengthy history of robberies. One of his many victims was Jack, the owner of a New York construction company. Mark successfully stole a range of construction materials from Jack's business. Among the stolen items, there was an expensive central air conditioning system and a kitchen cabinet set. After lifting them from Jack's property, Mark assembled and installed them in his own home. After decades of crime, Mark's dormant conscience began to flicker to life. Eventually, he resolved to turn over a new leaf, abandon his life of crime, and pursue an honest job. Mark came clean about his theft and set about to his new home in Los Angeles. Explaining the circumstances, Mark wished to provide reimbursement, but Jack insisted that the actual stolen items be returned to him. Jack's demand raised a series of questions.
All right, so now let's turn to 48. Let's explore the case and analyze. Question number 1. The air conditioning system was intact, but its removal from Mark's house would require him to rip out walls and ceilings, causing him significant expenses. Should Mark be allowed to keep it and instead reimburse Jack for its value? What do you think? What are your thoughts? Should Jack be reimburse Mark for the cost, the value, given the cash? Mitchell, yes, unmute yourself, go for it. You got to unmute yourself first.
Well, in theory, Jewish law just provides restitution plus, not just but not the extreme loss that he's created by having to rip it out of an existing place.
So Mitchell says you are not going to have to incur the expense of tearing up your house. All right, Sandy, did you want to say something?
No, no, not really.
You're good. Okay. Anyone else with a thought?
Well,
before you want?
I
Yes,
was
Karen.
thinking that if the point of teshuva is to completely repent and go through the steps, then doesn't he have to make good for what his victim is asking?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think it's sort of too bad for him. He's got to rip up the house.
All right, Karen says too bad for him. All right, Mitchell.
No, that's an extreme. Because first of all, the point is, this is how many years old, this equipment that he's gonna get back? It's not logical. There's no value to it.
Well, I don't, yeah.
It's
not-
probably useless at this point, the equipment he rips out. So
Mitchell,
the real issue is,
forget the practicalities. All right, imagine for all intents and purposes, it's in perfect condition, it's ready to go. This guy wants it, he loves it. It's his favorite AC that he ever had. No other AC ever had worked as good, right? Just for the purposes of the example here, let's just assume he wants it back.
Well, I mean, I don't think it has anything to do for him. It has nothing to do with the value of the air conditioner. It's about the symbolic act of saying, you know what, I took this from you and I'm giving it back.
Right, very good points. Let's go to the next question. Question number 2 says, Mark invested time and effort in assembling the kitchen cabinets in his home. As a result, the assembled cabinet set was evaluated to be of greater value than that of the unassembled raw materials he stole. Can Mark simply pay the value of the original unassembled set? So if you purchase something unassembled, it's cheaper. Put it together yourself. You purchase it all together, costs more money. He stole something unassembled. Now it is assembled. It's worth more. What does he have to return?
I think he's trying to bargain when he's in the wrong. He doesn't have a leg to stand on in the eyes of Judaism.
But he has a
So-
nice countertop to sit on. Mitchell, yes.
I wouldn't be so quick to say that what Judaism says it is. Judaism would look at the basic idea of the product plus a penalty. That's usually what you find in the Torah or references to losses. You incur a loss, you replace the animal and a plus, a percentage plus. So there's no issue that he has to give him assembled cabinets versus unassembled. He just has to create the value and pay the value plus a penalty.
But we're making some assumptions here about what Jewish law has to say. We will unpack all this information. Question number 3. If Mark is indeed required to return the set, should he be entitled to some compensation for the increased value of the assembled cabinets? What he is returning is worth more than what he took. The value is directly a result of him. He improved and increased the value of those items. Maybe he is due something, maybe not. Any thoughts? Marcus, Leslie, anyone have any thoughts?
Well,
No pressure. Alan?
what I'm hearing and what I'm thinking about is the person who was the victim of the theft shouldn't be better off because of the restitution, just as the person who committed the theft shouldn't be better off by his crime. And it seems to me that it's overreaching to say, I want more than what the thief took. Particularly if it means something like tearing apart a house or something like that. I think the reason that the secular system focuses on dollars is because usually you can give the value back without having these problems of increased value, of damage, and so forth. Very seldom do you require what they call specific performance, which is give me back exactly what was taken. It just doesn't work that way in real life.
For very practical reasons, absolutely. So this is an important question, and we will get to it. Next question, question number 4. Additionally, returning the actual stolen goods would entail significant transportation costs. Whose responsibility for the, any idea? Yes, Mitchell.
It's the same idea. He's entitled to, if you want to say, the cabinets, but that could be the same cabinets in another box from the manufacturer, from Home Depot or whatever, unassembled, and looks and walnut and the same product, same number, whatever, and that's what he gets. It's exactly.
Where you are shipping the person back, the product from your house, who pays for shipping? You can argue from Home Depot, from the, you're shipping it from your house. Who pays the shipping? Is it your responsibility as the thief to cover all and any costs related? Or is it your responsibility as the thief? I'm returning the item. Oh, you want it to be shipped to you, you have to pay. So again, we'll discuss what the principles these are based on. And then finally, question number 5, should the fact that Mark unilaterally stepped forward and confessed his misdeed affect his responsibility to make restitution in any way? And reimburse Jack for their value? Questions 2 and 3 were about, is Mark entitled to some compensation for increased value? Number 4, whose responsibility is it to pay the transportation bill? And should the fact that Mark confessed affect his responsibility? So we are going to get to all of these questions. First point that we need to make is that Jewish law's preference is that the thief should return the actual item, not the value of the item, right? The preference is the actual item, not the value. Marcus, could you please read text number 6 from the Rambam, Maimonides, Laws of Stolen and Lost Property, page 49. Just unmute yourself. Are you able to unmute yourself, Marcus? Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
You hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you.
All right. A thief is obligated to return the exact object that he stole, as a verse states. They must return the object that they have stolen. If the stolen object was lost or altered, the thief must pay its value. If a person stole a beam and used it in the construction of a home, scriptural law would require that the thief tear down the entire building to return the beam to its owner, because the beam itself is extant and unchanged.
So in this text, the Rambam says, tear down that wall, right? And return the original beam. Why? Why would it be so important from a Torah perspective to actually return the original item? What case could you make for the original item and not the cash value?
It's just simply symbolic. It's the act of repentance. It didn't belong to you in the first place.
Right? Especially since this is not just a legal issue, but we're dealing with an issue of teshuvah, right? There's something maybe deeper going on here. So number 1, ownership as an inherent reality. That person owned that thing. They owned that item. They didn't own a value, right? If a person had a couch that was stolen, right? They didn't own the value of a couch. You can't sit on the value of a couch. Try it, right? You will be on the floor. You can actually sit on the couch. You stole my couch. I owned that couch. That was my couch, right? We watched many Super Bowls on that couch. I want the couch back. So number 1, there's a preference for the return of the actual item because ownership is an inherent reality. Number 2, it's the most complete way to restore the damage. I'm restoring the damage by actually replacing the damage, not giving something new, something different. We've all seen a million times TV, movies, the storyline where someone's dog dies, right? You're watching your friend's dog, your neighbor's dog, the dog dies. Oh, quick, we got to run out and get a dog that looks just like it. Right? Does it work? Never
No.
works, right? Doesn't work, right? The most complete way is to actually restore the damage. And finally, number 3, so let's say you have that flat screen on your wall. Every time you walk by that flat screen, right, you are reminding yourself of your past criminal activity and a potential way for you to secure for yourself new items, because you see an item in your house that you stole. So maybe it's not the best thing for a person's tshuva process and personal development for them to continue seeing the item which they actually stole. So the ideal scenario is return the actual item unless it's gone, right? If you don't have the item anymore, so obviously you're going to have to just pay for it. Right? If it was changed to the extent that you're not really giving back the person the same thing that you took, so you're not going to get this item back, and you'll have to pay, the person will pay you the value of that item. So
if the item was made more valuable by the thief, is he supposed to take away the things that make it more valuable?
So we are going to get to that in a moment, right? We'll get to the increased value in a moment. For now, we're trying to understand the principle of why the Torah says the ideal scenario is to actually return the item. The Torah says it's so important to return the item that you would even be obligated to tear down your house to take out that beautiful beam that you have and return it to the original owner. Under what we're talking about now, right, based on this principle, would Mark have to rip out the AC unit from his house, which would definitely incur financial loss and the construction and so on, and return the original item? It would seem to be a clear biblical obligation. However, not so fast, right? The rabbis are getting involved over here. Let's go to the Mishnah, text number 7. This is on page 50. Mitchell, how would you like to read this text?
Penitence enactment. Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgedah testified that there is a rabbinic enactment regarding the case of thief that built a stolen beam into a building. The victim of the theft is only entitled to monetary compensation. This was enacted for the benefit of penitents.
So the Mishnah says that biblical law, right, scriptural law, would require him to demolish his house and return the beam, based on all the reasons that we have discussed so far. However, the sages of the era of the Talmud said that the value of doing teshuvah is so high, right, is such on a pedestal, we have to do everything in our power to make sure that the path for teshuvah is open for people. You make it too hard, they're not going to do it, right? Not because they're bad people, it's just it's very hard. And what we want to do, we want to help people, right? That's what we're trying to do. We want to help rehabilitate and restore people. So therefore, the sages made a rabbinic enactment. They modified this law in order to facilitate repentance. That if a person's going to have to tear down and destroy their house in order to be able to return it, you know what? They may say, forget it. I'm not talking about it. And again, who are we talking about? We're talking about a person who was not arrested. We're not is so high, you do not have to destroy your house. Let's go to text number 8. This is Rashi's comment on this section of the Talmud. Mitchell, you're going to read this one as well because it's Rashi's comment on this section of the Talmud.
Encouraging teshuvah. If we require thieves to destroy their buildings for the sake of returning the actual stolen deed, they will be discouraged from doing teshuvah.
So here we have a principle which is called in Jewish law, it's called takanos hashavim, right? This is an enactment that was made to make the path to true. Don't have to tear down your house, life is going to be easier. So now that we have learned this law called takanos hashavim, what does Mark do with the AC unit? Does he have to tear down his house or can he PayPal Jack?
Well,
What I-
according- Go ahead.
Go for it. Who?
According to this new law, he wouldn't have to tear down the AC, and he could just, PayPal him. But
Exactly. While scriptural law would require the items to be returned, rabbinic law allows for monetary compensation because we want the path for tshuva to be open. What about question number 2, which was about the cabinets, which when they were stolen, were unassembled. They were just flat pieces of wood and had no utility to them, required a lot of effort. Mark stole them, built them, they're all put together beautifully. If Jack gets them back, right, they're all ready to go to be installed. He raised the value of these cabinets. They are factually more expensive cabinets at this moment. Does Mark get anything, right? Is he obligated? Is there any money that's coming to him? Let's go to text number 9. We have the Talmud. Alan, would you like to read text number 9?
Enhancement of the actual body of the stolen item belongs to the thief.
The Talmud says quite clearly, the enhancement of the actual body of the stolen item belongs to the thief. Now, how does this make you feel?
well,
Is
I don't.
It seems to me that it's got all kinds of loopholes in it.
Oh, so
and
explain, what are the
unsatisfactory
problems? What's the
results.
loophole?
It seems to me, for example, if the stolen item was stock and the value of the stock increased, does this mean the thief keeps the value, the dollars that the stock earned, and just has to give the lesser amount back to the original owner?
Absolutely not.
That
Nope.
doesn't seem to work out.
Nope. That would not work, right? This principle, the enhancement of the actual body of the stolen item belongs to the thief, only applies in very specific circumstances. The example that you gave, we would not apply that, right? We would not apply it, right? It's only in a very specific set of circumstances. What is the circumstance? Number 1, it is when the thief is returning the actual item. So it would apply only when you're returning the actual item. The thief modified that item enough to raise the value, but not enough to alter it that it's a different item entirely, right? If it's a different item entirely, the thief just keeps it and they have to pay you the value of the item that you stole. But if you have these cabinets and now you're returning the cabinets, that's not, they're all put together. That's not considered modified to be altering them, right? Now the person who had the cabinet stolen is actually benefiting by having these cabinets returned to you. Because you're benefiting from having these cabinets returned to you, you're going to have to pay for that benefit, right? You are factually actually receiving a benefit. And don't worry that the thief is somehow being enriched by this. He's not being enriched by it, right? He's being compensated for what he put into it. So it's not like he had 0 and now he has 25. Right? He put in 25 to the cabinets, so he's going to get the 25 that he put into the cabinets. So this is not an issue of unjust enrichment or something along those lines. Rather, this is an issue of getting back what you put into it. The enhancement of the actual body of the stolen item belongs to the thief. Let's go to text number 10, where this is actually codified in Jewish law. Sandy, would you like to read text number 10, please, on page 52?
Number 10? Sure.
Yes.
If the stolen item was altered, but the change is reversible, such as stolen earth fashioned into bricks, the thief cannot keep it and it must be returned. However, the added value of the item does belong to the thief, and the original owner must pay the difference.
Now, there's multiple reasons actually why that's the case. But in the context of this class, right, why are we allowing this to happen? The rabbis award them the added value in order to encourage teshuvah. Again, we're talking about a thief who is coming forward. He was not busted. He was not found out. There's no cops sniffing around his house. If he's going to have to lose out on the investment that he made into that product, he may be more hesitant to do teshuvah. Right? Therefore, the original owner is benefiting from it as well, right? He's actually gaining something in the process as well. We believe in the value of teshuvah. We believe in people. We want them to change and grow. We want to give them every opportunity to change and grow. We don't want them to become disgruntled and remain question numbers 2 and 3. What are the options? To return Jack would have to reimburse him for the added value. So let's say it would cost, I don't know, $250 to install those cabinets. I'm making it up. $250 to build those cabinets. So based on this, Mark of the original cabinets, right? Whatever the amount that he stole was 5 questions, comments on this section.
Yeah, I have a question, but
All right, yes, Sandy.
sure. I mean, the value of the cabinet, okay, like you said, maybe it was $500, but Mark benefited from having those cabinets with him for all those years. And the other, and Jack lost out on the value of the cabinets from not from being stolen and from not having them for all those years. So why would he have to give him any money back? That doesn't seem right to me.
That's a great question. And there's a big difference between a person who is arrested and a person who is not arrested. Mitchell mentioned earlier that a person who is arrested, right, for theft, right, you have to repay back double what you stole. Because not only did you steal it, but you have deprived the person, not just of the item, but all of the value that is included within it. So the thief is going to suffer the same loss that the original owner, and the owner is going to get compensated. We're not talking about that circumstance. We're talking about before a person was arrested. A person is coming to court on their own. We want to help and facilitate that person's ability to do teshuvah. So they have to return what they stole, or they have to return the value of what they stole. But we're not going to be putting any other impediments in their way. Right? We're not putting any other obstacles in their way. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the class, that yes, in some of these circumstances, the original owner of the item, it may be costing them a little bit, right? It may be costing them. But due to the Jewish value of thinking about the other people and what we could do to help them, yeah, sometimes it's going to cost us a little bit.
Okay.
Doesn't this invite other people to commit crimes if they think they can get off more easily?
If the court does not believe that the person is sincere, then none of this is going to apply. And we'll talk about that shortly. This only applies in certain circumstances, and a real, true, genuine, sincere tshuva, the person coming to court on their own, all of these things certainly apply. So a person choosing to steal and somehow they're going to be able to get away with it, it's not likely. It's not likely to happen. A rabbinic judge is not going to let that fly. All right, next question. We have transportation costs. We need to get the goods from one location a result of the theft and the confession. From the US perspective, from the American law perspective, there is no question the thief is obligated on all the expenses. You stole it, you got to return it, you got to pay for it. That's all on you, right? That's absolutely going to be all on you. Jewish law, however, has a very different perspective, right? The goal here, we don't want to slam the door on tshuva. We don't want people to say that I can't afford it, it's going to be too complicated, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and forget it. We want people to come forward. So let's go to text number 11. Marcus, would you like to read text number 11?
Sure. People that stole from others and confess the theft are not required to pursue the owners in order to return the stolen item to them. The confessed thief may hold on to the item, notify the owner, and wait for them to come and collect it.
So the thief might be in a financial circumstance where there's no way he can afford the additional amounts, right? Whatever the circumstance may be. So therefore, we don't want that to be an obstacle to him. We want to make tshuva to be as easy as possible. Now, the commentaries do debate, what if the thief moved away? The reason that it's more expensive that he has to ship it, all the way, it's because the thief moved away. Or what if it's not the thief who moved away, it's the victim, the original owner who moved away, right? So there could be differences due to the circumstances where you might actually have to pay. But in a general sense, the thief would not have to pay for those expenses. Why? Because it is going to result in an obstacle, an impediment in the way to tshuva. So requirement to pay transportation will discourage the thief from coming forward. To make it easier to confess, the law doesn't require them to foot the bill. And again, I want to remind you, this is not a person who is in jail trying to negotiate some type of plea. This is a person who on their own came to court, right? We want to encourage that type of behavior. So therefore, we're making it easier. Right, any questions before we go to the next question?
Yeah, Rabbi.
Yes, Marcus.
What about the victim who worked to buy the stuff in the first place with his own sweat? Shouldn't he be compensated? And I think the victim wants to punish the thief more for violating him.
So you're bringing up a very good point. And in a justice system that is focused on retribution, that may be a part of the deal. And as I did mention before, that in Jewish law, that if a person is arrested for stealing items, they may have to pay double, right? They may have to return it. The Torah famously says that if you steal sheep, right, you have to, or a cow, that you're going to have to pay 4 times back, right, or 5 times the amount. So that concept does exist. But here we're talking about a person who on their own is coming to court and to confess. So we are raising the value of encouraging people to change and to become better and to be rehabilitated over the retribution factor of the criminal justice system. And from a secular perspective, I don't think that there is any element of paying more. If a person broke into someone's house, right, then stole a TV, they're getting back the TV. They're not getting back particular courts that would come into play when it comes to something like theft. All right, let's go to the next question, or actually the next point here. So the focus that we've had up until this point is the idea that a person should return either the act sometimes even apportation costs. However, the Talmud actually says that there are going to be certain circumstances where, because we place such a value on encouraging people to do teshuvah, we will actually encourage any restitution. We are encouraging the victim to say, I don't want my beam back, I don't want the AC unit back, and I don't want the value of it, I don't want the money of it, nothing. Let's go to text number 12 in the Talmud. Now, Leslie, I have not been calling on you because it's my understanding that the book, you don't have the book yet. Is that accurate, or do you have the book?
That's right. I don't have it yet. I have to come and pick it up. Sorry. Sorry.
No problem. Okay. Text number 12, Alan, would you like to read text number 12?
There was an incident in which a certain person sought to perform teshuvah. His wife said to him, "Empty head, if you do teshuvah, even the belt you are wearing is not yours." The fellow refrained and did not do teshuvah. At that time, the sages declared that if thieves wish to return what they stole, their victims should not accept it from them. If the victims nevertheless do accept from the thieves, the sages are displeased with their conduct.
So this is quite the interesting text over here. We'll get in a second. If the thieves wish to return what they stole, their victims should not accept it from them. So here we're saying something very different than we've said up to this point in time. Up to this point in time, we're debating the value, the increase in value, to return the item or the cash. Now, the Talmud says, do not accept it. And if you accept either the item or the value, the sages are not so happy. Now, this might seem very extreme. This might seem quite radical, so we have to explain. This does not apply in all circumstances or situations. It only applies in certain circumstances and situations. And we will look at some of those in text number 13. Mitchell, would you like to read text number 13, page 56? Got to unmute yourself first.
Eligibility criteria. When established thieves, career criminals for whom teshuvah is difficult, wish to do teshuvah on their own initiative, then if the stolen item is no longer extant, their victims should not accept compensation from them. This is to ensure that such thieves will not be deterred from doing teshuvah. However, if the thieves insist they wish to go beyond the letter of the law and pay compensation, the victims are not cautioned against accepting it.
All right, so let's break this down. Under what circumstances would we encourage someone not to accept the restitution, and would the sages be unhappy? So, number one, the thief is a career criminal, as opposed to a once or twice activity. Why would that make a difference? Because again, we know that the idea here is to increase the chance of a person doing tshuva. Why would it be harder for a career criminal versus a person who did it once?
Common sense says it's hard to reform a career criminal.
There's definitely some truth to that. But if we want to try, if we want to give a career criminal an option to do tshuva, but we tell that career criminal, according to the rules of teshuvah, not only do you have to be sincere, not only do you have to have remorse, but you have to return everything that you ever stole. So let's say the person has been a criminal for 30 years. Every item that they have, every dollar that they have, any penny that they ever earned was a result of theft. How are they going to be able to do it? What did this wonderful wife in the Talmud say to her husband? Empty head. Even your belt, right? Your pants will not even be able to stay up because we have nothing. So in the circumstance where a person was a career criminal, where it would be impossible for them to be ever able to make restitution, so therefore they're not going to be bothered with the whole thing. You know what Jewish law says? Again, we can't mandate it, but Jewish law encourages the victims to say, you don't have to give it back. This allows the career criminal to get on the path of tshuva. But if a person just committed, one burglary or robbery, absolutely he has to pay it back. You have to make restitution. There's no way that you can keep on to it. Another answer is we have to recognize that the thief came forward on their own volition. This means this person was not arrested. They're not sitting in prison. They're not trying to make some type of a deal. The person had no reason to come forward. Why did they come forward? Because they do feel bad. They do have remorse. And we want to help this person move along in the process of tshuva. So if the person came forward of their own volition, that's okay. And the third caveat is the stolen item is no longer extant. What does that mean? If he still has the item, even the career criminal, he has to return it, no questions asked. But in a circumstance where this career criminal doesn't have the items anymore, everything that he stole, right? He fenced, right? He sold, right? Whatever he did, he opened up an Amazon store of stolen goods. He doesn't have the items anymore. In those cases, we encourage the victims not to accept any financial restitution because we want the thief to do tshuva. However, if the item exists, absolutely that item has to be returned. Now, this does not legally obligate the victims to refuse. The victims are still owed the idea. The sages are just encouraging you in these circumstances not to accept it, but it does not legally obligate the victim to refuse, right? The thief is encouraged not to make use of the enactment. Now, why would we encourage the thief not to make use of this enactment? In other words, why would we encourage the thief to actually pay, even though we're giving them an out that he doesn't have to pay?
Because it's the act of tshuva, because it's the act of repentance.
Exactly. Even though we're giving the thief in this circumstance an out that he doesn't have to pay, the real truth is you did the crime. You should have to do the time, so to speak. Other people have lost because of you, and you should pay them. So yes, we want to make tshuva as easy for you as possible, open for you as possible, but at the same time, the reality is you do owe it, and if you are in a circumstance, you should pay it back for the victim, and also it probably will help you, because you know that you have repaired and restored that issue. All right, so to question number 5, okay? Mark's victims would be encouraged to refuse to accept restitution. Mark would be encouraged to refuse to accept the AC. He would be encouraged to refuse to accept the cabinets. He'd be refused to accept the value of the cabinets or the AC. Mark would be praised for insisting on making the return, right? If Mark still says, you know what, as part of my tshuva process, I want to return the AC or the value, I want to return the cabinets, then that would be a beautiful thing, and the person is well on the path of teshuva. So we have demonstrated tonight that the goal of Jewish law is to encourage good behavior and personal rehabilitation for the thief. Is there any similar programs in US secular law where we will allow a criminal to come forward on their own and we don't penalize them for it? We incentivize a criminal to come forward on their own even when they don't have to. They're not being arrested, they're not being investigated. So yes, there are two scenarios that I'm going to mention briefly. Number one is the gun buyback program. Sometimes the government will say, you bring us a gun, we don't care where you got it, we don't care how you got it. It could be completely total and illegal that you have this firearm in any way, shape, or form. We will pay you for it, and you go off scot-free. Another circumstance is tax amnesty programs. There are people who, for various reasons, have not been paying taxes, and the government will say, you come in, you file your taxes, we won't penalize you, we won't harm you, there's not going to be jail time, right? Again, the details are not so simple, but here we have two ideas where even in secular law, we actually will incentivize the criminal to come in to confess, and he will not be penalized. However, there's a huge difference between Jewish law and secular law, and that is the goal of the enactments. From the perspective of the US government, the secular perspective, why is the government offering these programs? And why is the Torah offering its programs? The government wants to benefit itself and society. What do I mean by that? When the goal of the government is to get illegal guns off the street. The guns could be dangerous, they can hurt people. So the government wants guns off the street, so therefore it has an enactment. Why does the government have this tax amnesty program? They get tons of money. In New York, in 1 year, they got almost $500 million. Many states have done this. Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, a few other ones, they have literally gotten hundreds of millions of dollars that they would not have for these incentives to benefit itself or society. What is the goal of Jewish law providing various leniencies to people who come in to confess? It's not for the benefit of itself and society. It seeks to help the offender to do tshuva. Because Judaism really does value the person. Every person's created in the image of others. And what is our goal? To help people become better. We're not trying to put obstacles in the way of people to become better. And that is actually facilitating repentance. So today, when it comes to dealing with a thief, we discuss some pretty radical ideas. We don't require a thief to demolish his house, to pull out the beam, right? And to return it. We give the thief the added value that occurred due to his work. You might waive transportation fees when returning the theft. And we encourage the victim in certain circumstances to relinquish their restitution. The key points. All right, the key points are refusing to play, even though I tested it earlier and it played perfectly. Okay. Just continue with your learning online, myjli.com/beyondright. Articles, essays, lectures, videos, including the PowerPoint and the video that I just tried to show that didn't show. So that will be available to you as well. Next week, Wednesday night, 7:30, we're going to continue to do this class. When we can get back to in person, but I think that we're going to continue on Zoom. So next Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. on Zoom. And for anyone who's interested, every Thursday night, we have a class, 30 minutes of Torah study. It's also on Zoom and also is recorded on YouTube. Thursday evening, 7:30 to 8 p.m. and 30 minutes of Torah study based on the weekly Torah portion. All right, any questions, comments, thoughts on tonight's class?
Yeah. Get the impression that crime pays.
There's very little element of crime paying in here, because we're talking about a person who does not have to do any of this. We're not talking about a person who's arrested and now they have all kinds of loopholes to get out of it. We're talking about a person who is at home, sitting pretty, got away with everything and anything that they stole and enjoying it, and on their own coming to court to confess. That person, we want to help. We want to encourage that type of activity. The person does not have to do any of this type of stuff. The person can enjoy their crimes and enjoy the fruits of their and now we're like giving them all these benefits. No, not the case. Crime does not pay from this perspective. But we do value people and their ability to do tshuva, so we make some steps that ultimately make it easier for them. And even in almost every circumstance that we discussed tonight, the thief will have to make restitution and go through all the steps of tshuva, and in most cases, returning the item or the value of the item. In almost every case, there's only a few certain circumstances where we can encourage people not to. No, you might not have to pay shipping costs, but at the end of the day, in almost every circumstance, you do have to pay. But if you take seriously the ideas of rehabilitation, if you take seriously the value of every person, you know what? Sometimes it is going to cost you a little bit, right? It is going to cost you, because these values are so important, and we organize the law and society in such a way that this value can rise to the top. So that's why these values are reflected in the laws.
I think that also the value of not having to require the person, or asking the person whose items were stolen to forego having the items returned to them. It's also a test as your own teshuva process, because if you don't accept and if you don't bring back the item and you accept the person's forgiveness, you yourself are enhancing your spirituality.
Very true, Sandy. Very good point. All right, thank you so much for joining us for lesson number 2. I look forward to seeing everyone next week, Wednesday, 7:30, for lesson number 3. Have a good night.
Thank you, Chesky.
You're very welcome. And I got your book, Karen.
Thank you. I'll email you.
Sounds good.